you're selling yourself to places that almost don't want you from the beginning.
It was like 99.9% of the time. And you get up and you're like, oh, I'm going to do some poetry. You can just see like faces drop and people start to begin to slide out the door. And they're like, oh, are you singing as well? I'm like, no, I'm doing some poetry. And they're like, oh, I fucking hate poetry. I probably said the way that I'm going in it is as a storyteller. So I'm just telling stories, like I said, poems, kind of just like little snippets of something that I've experienced. I'm straight to the bone, me. I'll just say who it is. And I think that's what people like.
A lot of poets that I've seen are very politically driven, or like it's heartbreak. It's always heartbreak.
Honestly, it's just fucking boring. Because I always follow this strict routine. It's damn sure to keep your bumhole clean. Must always wipe from front to back when cleaning up your dirty ass crack.
Hi there, welcome to the One More Songcast. My name's Lee. Today we've got a special guest, one that we wouldn't normally have on the pod. It's our very first poet, James. Welcome to the One More Songcast. How are we?
Yeah, I'm alright. Not bad, you?
Yeah, good. Cheers, pal. So, James, tell everyone a little bit about what you do, because it is a bit different to what we'd normally have on.
Yeah, I'm a poet. I guess people tend to have a notion about what poets are and what they look like. Basically, my thing is like I tend to write about what I know, which is pies, pints, pubs, all that type of stuff. So a lot of my poetry focuses on that sort of thing. I do have some emotional stuff in there as well, but I tend to try and keep it light-hearted and funny and stuff like that, and something that people can relate to.
Perfect. So you're sort of somewhere almost between like a vocalist and a stand-up comedian, but through the medium of poetry then. Is that effectively what you do?
Yeah, I guess so, yeah. I've had people like when I've done poetry festivals and all that type of stuff, and I've done it, and they've said, your set kind of seems like a bit of a stand-up set. But then I probably wouldn't go into a circuit with a lot of comedians. So I tend to kind of focus on what I mentioned, and just kind of keep it a bit more natural rather than just being someone that's just reeling off, the poems and stuff like that. I tend to kind of keep it a bit more light-hearted.
So where did the inspiration come from to go out and perform the poetry? Because, as songwriters, we're like, you're basically writing poems all the time, but you're doing it for a specific reason, to put it to music. So where did the inspiration come from for you to take it to poetry?
Well, like I said, I only started because years gone by, my thing was filmmaking, so I was screenwriting and directing. But then obviously lockdown happened, so you couldn't go out and do anything. And I kind of got a bit disheartened with filmmaking anyway. I was kind of thinking, there's a few things happening and trying to get funding and, relax. Because I've always done it quite guerrilla style filmmaking, like me and a few friends, and then we'd go out and shoot something. But then obviously lockdown happened, so I was I'd always wanted to write stories because I'd enjoyed doing that from being a kid. And then, lockdown happened, so it was kind of just something to write. Whereas with filmmaking, it was you write a script, then you find the money, then you got to find the crew, then you've got to get the cast, then you've got to go and film it, then you edit it, and all that, and much more. So with the poetry, it was you could write something that was maybe one line or half a paragraph, and then that was it. You could put it on Instagram, put it on Facebook or whatever, and then when stuff started opening up again, after lockdown, obviously everyone wanted to just go out, and I just started going to open mics. And again, it wasn't a thing where it's I've got this idea for a film, and then it's only becomes something 8 months later. It was right, I wrote this poem last night, I can go and perform this at this open mic tonight.
So obviously there's an element where you're sort of thinking, right, okay, I've got these poems, you've come out of lockdown, performances are starting to happen again. Really, it's quite obvious where the music scene is. It's quite obvious where, the theatre scene is. It's quite obvious where the comedy scene is. For you guys, like, where would the poetry scene be? Because it's quite a niche sort of performance thing, really.
It is. Yeah, I mean, obviously being in, like, I mean, at the time when I first started, obviously there was time I moved back to Leeds. So obviously with it being a city, like if you go to Manchester, Liverpool, Nottingham, down south to London or whatever, obviously cities obviously a lot more diverse, especially in like towns like Wigan. So there's always stuff like, there's always creative hubs like that. So they'd always have a lot of stuff on. But when I moved back to Wigan, it was a bit more, obviously a bit more closed off. Like you say, you've got your stuff like your open mics, which generally tends to be musicians. But I always preferred doing them because it was something a little bit different. And you were getting in front of a different audience. Like I said, people that might have this idea of, this is what a poet is, this is what it's about. And it's like, no, you know, like you say, you could go to an open mic and there could be like 50 metalheads or something in there, you know, and they're like, oh, no, I'm not into poetry and stuff like that. But then if you start talking about stuff that they can relate to, stories maybe that, you know, they've been part of, or poems about places they've been to, or like I say, like a lot of my stuff about going out on the session stuff, you know, like around King Street in Wigan. It's like people will be like, oh yeah, I've done that, and yeah, I know that, you know, been sick in bins or in alleyways and a whole array of other stuff. So that's why I kind of liked it. It kind of brought it to another audience, and, you know, kind of told them like, this is what you can do with poetry. Like you say, everything, music is poetry. You know, when people say about poets and stuff, but then you got to look at like rap music, like Nas or something like that. And I think he said himself, he's like, I'm a poet. I'm not like a musician. I'm a rapper. He's like, I'm a poet. And that's how music started, really. It was like people had classical music and then just put words to it, which was poetry.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. I think by the sounds of it, you're very much a guy that likes to go to a place where you win a crowd over rather than where it's sort of your audience is there, in a way, I guess. And I suppose it sounds like that scene, half the time you are having to win a crowd over because you've got to turn that mode from, oh, right, okay, these people aren't here for me, they're here for the tunes.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, like as I said before, it was like 99.9% of the time, and you know, you get up and you're like, oh, I'm going to do some poetry. You can just see like faces drop and people start to begin to slide out the door. Or you mentioned before you go on, oh, are you singing as well? I'm like, no, I'm doing some poetry. And they're like, oh, I fucking hate poetry. Like I've done so many gigs where I've done them, and then people will come up to me afterwards, and I've seen that specific person when I've said I'm doing some poetry, and the look of like dread and fear on the face. And then afterwards they've come up to me after the show and been like, oh, I loved it. They're like, I hate poetry, but I love your stuff.
So like, obviously we spoke a little bit off camera about you maybe going to actually open up for a Metallica tribute act or something like that. So is that where the majority of your gigs are? And also, when you do get the different gigs where it is specifically for poetry, how are you going into that? Are you going into it from an a cappella point of view, or are you going into it to do it like a spoken word artist, for example? The only one I can think of that I was really into growing up was Scroobius Pip. But are you going into it from that sort of spoken word idea, or are you going into it from the a cappella poetry idea?
I probably said the way that I'm going in it is as a storyteller. So I'm just telling stories, like I said, poems, kind of just like little snippets of something that I've experienced, a story about a time in my life, or somebody that I know, or something that's happened. So, you know, like I don't tend to do that many poetry gigs anymore, or poetry open mics. I like doing the stuff, opening up for bands or comparing evenings, doing like an old school, I guess like you'd say, like when they used to have like variety shows and that type of stuff, because it just breaks it up and it's something different, and it's getting people into poetry that might not necessarily give it time of day any other time, you know, because like I said, they might have this certain idea about it and it's just not that at all.
Yeah, so with music, I think when you first burst onto the scene, you're doing the open mics, you're trying to get gigs in places, you've almost got to sell yourself. You're selling yourself to places that almost don't want you from the beginning. So at the beginning, it's always difficult when you've got so much to prove, because no one knows who the hell you are anyway. But you're going in with an act that people aren't really looking for in a certain way. Particular places that you've said you performed. Obviously, you can apply for these festivals, but you've already got established poets there, so that's more like our scene. How do you break into a circuit?
Yeah, it's a good question because, like I say, like if I go to like a local boozer that's got all like not for stereotype, but people that might not necessarily have interest in something like that. They might just want to go and have a pint, and even sometimes when there's music on, they can't be asked with that. Even if they're playing all the hits and everything, like you've got Wonderwall and stuff going and all that type of stuff. So for me, what I've started to do is I've started to do that, open up for bands. And I kind of took the idea from obviously John Cooper Clarke, who
Brilliant
started,
poet, by the way.
exactly. But he's known, like people that are like creative still know him, but then there's like a lot of people that still won't, that might be into music and stuff. And he started pretty much by touring with an opening for Joy Division.
Right.
So I kind of took the same thing. I thought if I'm wanting gigs and stuff like that, I know musicians, so I thought, well, would you mind if you've got this gig on here, would you mind me doing 10-15 minutes just before you get on? Something different, it might go down well, it might not. And as I say, I've had like the best feedback has been from like the more like traditional like pubs and stuff, with a load of blokes that wouldn't really listen to it, but they're like, oh, I love your poem, about King Street or about such and such a thing, or when I've done ones about Blackpool and stuff, and like, oh, I used to always go with my nan and granddad as well. And it's just relatable for them. And like the books I've sold as well. People used to say to me all the time, they were like, yeah, I'm not into poetry, but I really like your stuff because I get it. And I'm not having a dig at people that are, writing stuff that's, like using a lot of metaphor and stuff like that. I'm straight to the bone, me. I'll just say who it is. And I think that's what people like. You don't have to be, a poet and speak ever so eloquently. I talk because I'm from Wigan, and that's, and that's what I think people like about it.
I think that's a really important lesson for anyone in any field, because I'm very much the same. Like the way me and Luke will chat off camera and have a bit of banter, and even the way I am on the podcast, it's just the way I am on stage. So if someone heckles, I'm giving it the banter like I've been mates with them for 25 years, because it's just
exactly. Yeah.
I've never been able to put on an act as such. And maybe like sometimes when you're not up for a gig, you are putting on a bit of an act.
Yeah.
But I think that's a really important lesson, just to be yourself, I guess.
Yeah.
And you've got to bring an identity to it, haven't you?
Yeah.
So you have to have an identity to perform anyway. So going back to that whole writing side, when do you know when you've got enough material to perform? Because obviously we would have like, a 25-minute set. And most songs are going to be between 3 and 5 minutes. So you know how many songs, you can roughly work out how many songs, and we're talking in between where you're going to work it. So how does that work in the poetry sector, where you've got almost like you could have, like you say, you could have one line, you could have a paragraph, might even have a whole sonnet, which is 14 lines, or you might have, an 8-verse poem or something like that. How does that work?
I mean, I'm pretty good when I'm on stage. I'm pretty good at interacting with the audience, and I think it comes as well from like doing a lot of film stuff. Like if I've acted in stuff as well, like I'm a big fan of like improvising and stuff like that. So there's a lot of times where I'll make observations, and again, I guess that's kind of like a comedy thing, where I'll make observations about something that I've just seen or a poem that I've just performed, and I'll make a comment about it. So I kind of know roughly. If someone says to me, oh, you've got 20 minutes to fill, I'll have a list of poems, and then I kind of know what I'm saying in between. But then I'll also, if I know, I'll say, well, I can talk about this as well and add this in. And yeah, I'm pretty, I go with it pretty, like, because that's how I do. Because like if I was sitting having a conversation, I'd do the same. Like I'd make an observation about something, and I'd try and make like a witty, funny comment about it.
Yeah, is there any sort of like storytelling about the poem you've written as well in between? I guess that like sometimes we might do it about songs or whatever, right, I wrote this song for this reason or whatever. It's obviously you're going to pick up from something. Like maybe there is a heckle in the crowd. I've not seen too many poets get heckled, to be honest with you. But is there an element, if there's when you are on a more serious poem or you've got a big story to tell about one of your funnier poems?
Yeah. I mean, I've kind of compared it again to go back to films and stuff. Like I always find, like I'm a big fan of like French films and foreign films, German films, Japanese films, and I kind of always find with a lot of like British, like, you know, kitchen sink dramas, as you would say, they always seem to end on a sad note, whereas like if you look at other countries, more kitchen sink type films, they don't. There's always that bit of hope in it at the end, or maybe just something, just a touch. So that's kind of how I see my work. Like, you know, like that, I do have poems that are, you know, depressing and about a shit time in my life. But then I'll just kind of throw a bit of humour in it and kind of make people feel a bit more upbeat, because it's a nice change. Because I think being British, we kind of always like, it's always like, oh, grey skies are here and they'll be here tomorrow and the day after and that. So it's kind of sometimes just throwing it in. But I'll always tell, like I said, stories. It could be something of a certain day. I've got stories about when I was a kid on my bike. Again, poem, when my nan and granddad used to take me to Blackpool. But then I might just have something like, I'm just in the middle of writing one now, and it's about a drug dealer called The Chemist. Do you know what I mean? So like, I've never been a drug dealer, but you know, it's just kind of like that, you know, that type of stuff. And again, it's like a little bit, I like to tell it as a story.
So what turned you off from going down the more emotional route, or like maybe a lot of poets that I've seen are very politically driven, or like it's heartbreak. It's always heartbreak.
Honestly, it's just fucking boring. Because like I'm not being like, people might say that about mine, but sometimes you'll go and you'll be in there for 2 hours at an open mic event or whatever, and you'll just be sat there and someone, like I said, my poems, because I've said this to Luke, I said, I keep mine pretty short. The attention span of people now is not what it used to be. You know, people are on stuff now, watching films, and it's all quick cuts. Watching YouTube videos, TikTok videos, it needs to be 10, 15 seconds to reach the audience. Can't be any longer than that, because then they'll tune out. So I tend to keep it short, but it's like sometimes you'll go to these poetry events and they'll do a one poem and it's like 5 pages long. And it's kind of like it's almost like walking through mud or treacle, do you know what I mean? It's like, you just kind of like, they'll start and you'll kind of be like, what you getting at? Like, what you're trying to, you know, you do. It's like writing a script. It's like 10 pages in, you've got to start, like, you've got to get that hook, you've got to get them in. And sometimes you just kind of like, yeah, it could be something that they've been through, something absolutely horrendous. And I've sat and watched and been on bills with people that I know that have been through something absolutely horrendous. But then when you're doing like a 5-minute poem of just someone talking, it just takes you back to school days where someone's going, this is a pie chart, this is an Excel spreadsheet, and it's just that, and it's just like, you kind of,
it's almost like what everyone else is doing, so you're like, right, I need to do something a little bit different.
But it's just kind of like, you're losing the point. It's like, it could be something like, I remember reading this little thing, I think it was Hemingway around with his friends, and he was having a discussion, and it was something to do, it was like, I bet I can write you like just a short little, well, even a poem, and it'll make you cry. And he like bet whatever it was at the time, and he said, there's an ad in the newspaper, it says newborn baby shoes for sale, never worn, and that made his friend cry. And yeah, he won the bet. And I was like, so that gets to it. But then you could have someone that could have gone through that exact thing. And I know, and I've been part of people who've been through that. And they could write a 10-page thingy out of it. But then the genius of that is just that little bit has summed the whole of them 5 pages up in just that.
Yeah, I mean, there's an element of that to related to obviously our podcast. Normally we are music, so like I think All my songs used to be 5 minutes long because I was mad on prog rock.
Yeah.
So I always used
That's
to write
pretty
songs.
good, that, for prog rock, innit? And usually like 12 minutes or something
Yeah,
like
I
that.
did. Well, to be fair, my dissertation at uni was 25 minutes and it was 2 songs. The first one was 15 minutes, 22 minutes I think I got, because you had 10 minutes either side, don't you, for anything. So it was like, yeah, the first song was 15 minutes, but it was like 3 songs that seamlessly went into one another. And I think there is something about, okay, you get that. I'm kind of in the same boat as you. I never really wanted to write love songs or whatever because it's just what everyone else does. And it was kind of like, well, I'm not naturally romantic anyway as a person. So like for me to find that language, I have to work really hard or I have to really be thinking something at the time to find the right words. And it's sort of like, yeah, like you say, it just gets repetitive. Like it becomes like a little scene of bands that all write about the same thing. So when you're writing, like, do you have the same sort of writer's block, or where you have to be in the mood to write things, or are you one of those that writes something every day? You might keep some to side to use it, or do you?
I've kind of changed now because I kind of, when I got to the end of like, I mean, I still write scripts and stuff. But I used to have a thing where it was like, right, I'm going to sit down today and do 10 pages. And then if that takes me 10 minutes, I just fly through it. Then I'm done. Or it takes me all day, you know. But I've kind of gone past that now because I kind of feel like sometimes, because I used to have a thing where I'd take like if I was just, because I like going out on walks, I'd just take a notepad and a pen with me. But then I end up sitting there in the woods or something and I'd just be like, sat there and I'm like, I'd write something and I was like, fucking crap that. And I'm just writing just because I feel like I should be writing. So I just write now as and when I get something. So I just do it on my phone. Like I just
notes page.
Yeah, just do that because I don't need to I need to have 2 hours at sit at my laptop. And sometimes it's good because sometimes, like I say, I'd do that. I'd write 10 pages and then I feel like I could write another 10. But it kind of keeps that hunger. It's like, right, I'm going to stop myself because I know when tomorrow comes around and I'm more excited to write. Because sometimes it is a slog and you're like, oh, fucking hell. It's like, I need to do this and stuff. But yeah, no, I just tend to write as I go because, like I say, you know, you see the world, you interact with people, you see what's going on, you do things, and it's kind of like sometimes you could just be sat there, someone might mention something, and then you're like, oh yeah, I remember when that happened. And then you could write a poem and it was like, oh yeah, this and that. And then I could just sit there and then I've written something in 5 minutes.
Yes. It's quite weirdly similar to a songwriter, this. The only difference is we probably have to do voice notes so we can remember the melody, because there's times where I've written the words down, I think I'll remember that. There's no way I can forget that melody. Come to actually learn it on the guitar from what you're hearing, you're like, oh, fucking hell, what was that?
Yeah.
So I suppose it's quite simple for you. You've just got to kind of remember the rhythm, I guess.
Yeah, I went through the dictaphone thing at some points when I did like my first film after I come out of film school. And I was like lying in my bed one night and I was just like whispering into my dictaphone. So I've got the idea of what happens with Tommy. I mean, I don't know how I was whispering. I was like 21, 22. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And yeah, so I did that at one point. But I always find like when you get in bed, like a lot of the time, like I find quite creative when I get into bed. Like if I get an idea, just
it's always 1 o'clock in the fucking morning, isn't it?
Yeah, like I'll literally like I'll be lying in bed, then I'll get an idea, I'll put my phone down. A minute later, I'm up and writing another couple of lines, put it down, and then writing something else. And then in the morning, it's like, oh yeah, I've written something there, or I just need to add a couple more things to it.
The shower's an inventive place.
Oh, the shower. The shower.
For writing.
Yeah, just so everyone knows, Luke's off camera doing some camera editing with a new piece of equipment, testing it out, and he's just said the shower's a creative place. So leave that to your imagination.
Hey, it is. I mean, I'd say the toilet's a creative place.
Oh, yeah, there's nothing better than writing on the shitter.
My book does actually my book does actually feature a poem called Bog Roll. So, and I actually did write it while sat on the toilet during COVID.
Is that a middle bit, or is that?
No, that's what it's about. Yeah, I wrote it while sat on the toilet doing the vision.
Could you read an extract from you?
Yeah.
Read a poem?
Yeah.
Because there's one behind. So,
Yeah.
go on, you tell him, Lee, but we've got some of his books behind us in the shot today.
Right, so so James has actually got, well, we got one of James's books behind you. James Walton, his name is. I didn't know that, but now I've read it. It's, so me and James have just met literally 10 minutes before the start of this recording. So, James, can you just do us a favour and read us an extract of one of your poems?
Yes, I will. And as I've obviously mentioned, Bog Roll, it's one of my favourite ones to read, so I'll do that one. Belting, obviously being from Wigan.
In all good stores, is it?
Yeah, so Waterstones and stuff like that, if anyone's interested.
Nice.
Or come and see me, I'll do you come see me, I'll do you a bargain deal, and I might even sign it for you.
Look at that. What a guy.
Just make sure that your face is up to mic. I know it's difficult, but yeah, you're good.
Yeah, so I'm going to read the aforementioned Bog Roll.
This would have been so much better if you'd have read it off a bog roll as well.
I did write it on I did a music video for it. Well, same music video, and I'm sat just reading it off a toilet roll. My voice is a bit hoarse at the moment, so I'll try my best not to start coughing. Cushion layers enriched with lotion, soft and fragrant for every bowel motion. Always follow this strict routine. It's damn sure to keep your bumhole clean. Must always wipe from front to back when cleaning up your dirty ass crack. Use enough roll to make a boxing glove on your fist and make sure there's plenty so there's not covered in shit. Once the mess is cleared, use one last layer to make sure it's all disappeared. Then pull up your kecks and check on your poo. Then it's all good to flush on down the loo. And now to initiate the final demands is to lather up the soap and wash those hands.
Brilliant, that.
I always think it'd be a good thing for teaching your children about wiping their own bum as well.
There's a lesson for everyone.
Yeah.
Should we wrap it up there, do you reckon? I reckon that's a good short episode. If you want to just finish off on anything, or where can we find
Yeah, where can we find you, James?
So I'm on Insta and Facebook, all the usual socials. Just James Walton Writer. On there posting about any gigs or anything I've got up and stuff like that.
And are they mainly ticketed events, or do you is it normally free?
It varies. It just depends, obviously, depending who wants to come and see me or the others on there. So we do some ticketed events, but nothing like, I'm not going to be like an Oasis thing where I'm like, yeah, £350. You know what I mean? For a ticket. I mean, obviously, not that I'm saying like I command a stage like Liam Gallagher or anything like that. Yeah. But yeah, so just check out on there, and I'm always gigging and stuff and opening up for musicians, comparing events.
Perfect.
And we will get you on for a full episode as well, James, within the next couple of weeks. Just wanted to tease you, I guess.
Well, perfect. Thanks for watching today. James, thanks for coming on, mate. It's been a pleasure to meet you.
Absolutely belting. No worries. Loved it.
Take care, everyone. See you soon.